All right, greetings again, everyone. We're on to step 2, applying the HTML structure to your text to hypertext conversion of a paper. So what I've got open here is the one that we saved, which was step 2. I'm going to go ahead and change the title here, which will make that step 2. And then the first thing I'll do here is inside for the heading, the MLA heading, I'm going to get rid of these paragraphs and just make line breaks here. BR space there. And then as I get rid of these paragraphs, let's see, no, that's right, okay. Because we don't really need all of those to be separate paragraphs. So it's just one paragraph here to sort of get us started. Then the next step, I'm going to save, so that's baked in. Now our next step is we're going to go through and put in the structure that you did in the Bears assignment, the structure where we'll be adding in headings H1, H2, H3, and putting in divs to like organize the paper and put in this HTML page to create the structures. And then as we create those structures, we'll go back in and make it so that those things all are linked, and putting in a nav bar so that the paper is all structured and it actually becomes a web page, not just a text that you scroll through. So our first move here, here's where our title is, and notice they just have that inside a paragraph. So I'm just going to change that from a paragraph to an H1, change this to H1 so that you open and close that. And now that we look at that, we realize, okay, so this is from the title down to this part. So the first two paragraphs here are the introduction to the paper. So we've got an H1 and a paragraph, two paragraphs that we want to have grouped inside this part. So we create a div, right? And then we go ahead and come down under those two paragraphs, we'll hit return a couple times and create an end tag for the div. So what we've just done is we've grouped that H1 and the two following paragraphs inside one div, right? We'll go ahead and hit save. We're going to do the same thing, right, for this historical context, which is the next section of the paper. So the first part here is explaining the kind of problem and mapping out what the paper is going to cover. And then the next section is this historical context. So in the source paper, this was made small caps, but we're going to go ahead and make it upper and lower case. And then once we've made that upper and lower case, then this will be an H2, a second level heading. So not a paragraph, but an H2. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did for the section above it, and we're going to create a div, which is a section, right, that will group this heading, this paragraph, and really it's just the heading and the paragraph of that, because then we have the next section which is coming up. So we're going to hit a few returns, and we'll close that div, right? And so you see how what we're doing is we're using the divs to hold together a heading and a couple of paragraphs in one group of text, then a heading and one group in some text. And then the next step, these are now our third level headings. So in the source material, in the Word file, get up to the top here, right? So here's our paper, double space, and right there's your title, which we converted that to an H1. Here's the first two paragraphs, which we made our first div. This will be our second level heading that made this upper and lowercase, and then we have these second level headings in the paper. So for the second level headings, what it did was it just made them italics and used the periods, but to make this a web page, instead of having those as an M, we're going to make that an H3, third level heading. Hang on one second. Pause. Okay, so notice that in these paragraphs, the heading was inside that paragraph. So we want to take that out. I'm gonna cut that and paste the H3 so it's separate, and then we'll move the paragraph there we are. So now you've got the H3 that's outside that, but we need to put that inside a div. And then this div will group this heading, this paragraph, down to this paragraph. And so what we're doing is we're creating structures inside inside the paper. Right now, I'm not going to. I'll let these ones. I'm not going to have you watch as I go through all of these, but I'm going to do the same thing where I replace these M's, right, with an H3 and move that paragraph. I'll do it once more just so everyone sees again. There's the div, right? This is going to become an H3. This will close the H3. And then we'll take that and paste it. And then we'll get our paragraph. So inside this div, the distribution of new knowledge, here's the section on distribution of new knowledge. And once again, we have a one paragraph section. So I'll close that div, and I'll just leave this one for now. So you see how to create the divs, and then the next move, right, once we sort of create these divs and we create the whole rest of, so I'm going to pause, but I'm going to go down, I'll just walk through and show. I'm going to create these divs which group the next section, which is what farming's influence on education, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs with a couple block quotes, 6, 7 paragraphs. And then that is where the paper section has been left out for the purposes of it being a demo. So I'm going to put in divs there and group this. And then here with the conclusion will be not an H3, but I'll make that an H2 level heading and group the conclusion in its own div. And then I'll do the same thing with this section of the notes. Right, so where the notes, and the notes, this section plus note 1, note 2, and note 3, that will all be its own div. And the works cited will be all its own div, all the way down to here. And then I'm going to do that really quickly, and then I'll come back and show you how to put in the IDs. This is just like what you did in the structuring HTML in your bears part of the assignment. But I'll pause and be back in just a sec with all those filled in.